Well, welcome everybody. So excited to see juniors. Are we excited?
No.
Okay. Inside joke there. Yesterday, when I reminded all the juniors that we had a program, I said, "Hey everybody, are we excited?" They were like, "No." I was like, okay, so I thought I'd try it again. So, parents, are we excited? Yeah. Juniors, are we excited?
Yes.
At some point, we'll win. We'll win on that. So we'll go ahead and get started. Thank you all for coming and for being on time. As stated in the email that went out, we do have some refreshments, so please help yourself to the refreshments throughout the course of the program. Happy New Year in person, and welcome to almost the second half of junior year, which is going to be the most exciting time of his life for lots of reasons. But it is always exciting, honestly, for Candace and Meredith and myself because this really is the jump off point for the one-on-one work that we're going to do with you for the next 18 months. It's going to be a time for you to really explore and have lots of great engaging conversations at home, and for us to not just get to know you better, but really get to know about your aspirations and your pursuits beyond Sandy Spring, and there's just a lot to take in, and this is. For me, at least, I think this is probably one of the most fun parts of my job, because there are just so many opportunities that you'll get a chance to explore, and we get to explore it with you. So that's why when we do come back and I'm like, "Are you excited?" You just don't know. You just don't know yet what's in store, and so we're really looking forward to it. Again, my name is Chris Miller, and
I'm Candace Ashton. Hi, everybody.
Yes, and of course, as I always say, the person who really runs the ship, Meredith Schenkel, and we're the college counseling team, and we're excited today because in addition to just kind of setting the tone for where you are at this point in your college process, given the number of programs that we've had with you, the conversations we've had with you over the last year, after gathering all that information, kind of setting the tone for where you are now, we're also very excited that we have three very special guests, here today to share with you their experiences from very different vantage points that all of you will be a part of at some point. And so what we're going to do today is Candace and I have some information to just kind of set the tone for kind of where things are for you right now. And then we're going to turn it over to our panel, who are going to share different pieces of information regarding the college search process, how it looks from the college admission standpoint to how it looks from the student standpoint, as well as from the parent perspective. And then after they share their words, we're going to have some time for Q&A with them, and then Candace and I will wrap up with some housekeeping and some reminders about things that are coming up in the near future. Okay? Sound good? Okay. Any initial questions to start? Okay. All right. Okay. Okay. So how many of you have been through this process before, Karen? Okay. All right. And then for the rest, I know for students, all of you, it's your first time. Going through it, because I'm assuming none of you have applied to college yet. Yes? Okay, very good. So just so you know, there are a number of different ways in which we will be working with you, and that we will support you, at least for right now, as it concerns for the second half of the year. After this meeting, your next big thing that will be on your agenda are midterm exams. which we are wishing you all the best of luck on. But for the remainder of the school year, we're going to be scheduling individual meetings with students and parents as well. If you are, if you're available to join in those meetings, you're always certainly welcome to do that. And we encourage that because as much as this is a student-driven process, this is also very much a family conversation. And so when we do set up our meetings, while most of our work is done directly with students, we know that there are other influencers as well, and so there might be meetings that we'll certainly have with you, and certainly for the first meeting where we'll sit down with you, we certainly do encourage parents to be at those meetings if it's at all possible. And so in the follow-up communication that we'll have after this meeting, we'll let you know how you can go about setting up those meetings with us. And one goal that we have is that we certainly try to see if we can meet with the entire class. Doesn't always happen. I mean, it's an ambitious goal, but we try to see if we can at least get one meeting in before an intersession. But certainly throughout the course of the second semester, we'll be looking to set up individual meetings with students. And those meetings will include a lot of different things, from talking about class schedules for next year, talking about your standardized testing plan, if it'll include the SAT or the ACT, or language tests for international students if they're considering those. We'll talk about what college you might be considering. So there's a lot of things that will happen during the course of those meetings. But that's just one phase, one facet of the process, in addition to other group presentations like the one tonight, and then other presentations that we'll have over the course of the spring. Something else that we'll talk about are teacher recommendations and the importance of them and the role they play. And I know that that our panel will also address how teacher recommendations play a role in the admission process. But it's one thing that students have control over. Is who they ask to advocate for them. One thing that they don't have to ask for are recommendations from us. Candace and I write recommendations for every single student in the senior class. That is a gift. That goes with all of your applications and all of your school records. But the one or two teachers that you ask is a very important piece. And so we'll talk to you about guiding you through that process. Other things that we'll do I need to sign this.
Apple product, right?
Sorry about that. We care about security here at St. Spring Friends School. The other thing that we can also help guide you on is financial aid, advice, scholarship searches, and how to navigate that process. And then further down the road, once we get to the later part of the senior year, of junior year going into senior year, is college application support and college essay, personal statement guidance. We work very closely with the English department here to help support students on developing essays, whether it's their main personal statement or individual essay supplements for different colleges. But that, among many things, is one of the things that takes up the most time for students. And so starting early is important. And also working through lots of different ideas. And so we are also here to help guide students through that process as well. Okay. All right. Let me turn over to Candace.
Sure. So, in terms of, okay. Nope, you're good. You're good. So the platform that we use for college applications. Many of you have maybe heard of Naviance. We don't use Naviance. We use a product called Maya Learning, which was introduced in the fall session that we had earlier in the year. And I know a lot of you, I've seen a lot of you logging in, which is great. Some of you haven't, but now's the time. But again, one of the features, and I have there's a how-to video that we're going to share out that you can watch on your own time about how to log in and the different features. But one of the features that you really should be starting to use now is the colleges considering list and developing that. There's a college search function that's included in My Learning. And I always say that this is the time that your list should be getting longer, right? There are 3,000 colleges and universities out there. I'm sure you've heard of 20. Now's the time to explore those schools you maybe aren't as familiar with, those things that, exploring them based on your interests, figuring out what your interests are. My Learning has some really great interest surveys. So figuring out what your interests are and the colleges that fit those interests, and then digging deeper into those, right? So if you come in April and you're like, so I've got like 30 schools on my list, I'm like, okay, that's great. If you come in September, we're gonna have to sit down. But really exploring, using the college considering list to keep a running tally of what you're looking at, schools that you've been interested in, places you might want to go visit, right? As you're planning out this spring and deciding where do we want to go visit, can we hit these 5 schools on probably not a long weekend, that's a lot of schools, but can, over spring break or whatever your planning is, that really helps, and that's a place to house all that information. They've made a slight change, which I think some of you noticed because I got emails, but if you want a parent account, you just need to email us and we have to send you an invitation. It used to be you just could sign up, but they've switched the security. So if you send us an email, we can create a parent account for you that will be linked to the student account. You won't be able to see all the things, but you'll be able to make suggestions to your students. You'll be able to see, have they requested their teacher recommendations? Have they done? So it's a way for parents to also be informed without having to have your child tell you something. They're not always the greatest at communicating. So this is a way that you can sort of find out anyway. And there's also a compare me feature. So our historical data in terms of where our students have applied, grades and test scores, and what their outcomes are stored in there. And it does like the last 5 years or so. And so you can look at a school that you're interested in and you can say, compare me, it's based right now on PSAT and practice ACT scores and your GPA. And you'll see sort of where you pop up on that list. And it helps you judge the sort of, is this a reach, is this a likely, is this a target? It gives you a sense of that. The reason I like this feature better than looking at maybe a school's middle 50% of what they have on their website is that it's actual Sandy Springs students, right? So it's like, when you're looking at what the school has on their website, it's all the kids from all over the place who've applied there. And that means different grading scales, different course offerings, different geographical regions, right? But when you're using the Compare Me feature, you're looking at Sandy Springs students and how we may be overperforming at some schools and underperforming at other schools, and it just gives you a better sense. Every year is different, and I'm sure James would tell you that. Every year is different, every class is different. You might look identical to a student and not get in, and blame him, don't blame us. But it does give you a sense of where you would fall. So those are some features that are really cool. If you haven't gone in, log in. And this is a time to start using those things. You should not feel any pressure right now. You should be thinking about exams. But as you're having time, as you're starting to look, My Learning really is built to be one-stop shopping for all of this stuff. Throughout the process, we use it. It's how we send documents to schools. Like we use it for everything related to college applications. So you really do need to get in there and start exploring. Mary. Okay. Oh, any questions about My Learning?
Or anything that we've discussed so far?
Yes.
Yeah.
How did the kids get their accounts? Through an email or?
They're already there.
They're there?
Yeah, they just sign into their Google account.
Okay.
Yeah, so they will go to mylearning.com and they will sign into their Google account. So it's already there for them.
And again, the video that we'll send out also, it walks through all of that. Like you click on sign in with Google, you use your Sandy Springs Gmail account, and you're there.
So do you guys push the transcripts there? And then related questions, how do like the SAT scores, AP test scores, how does that all get populated?
So We upload transcripts, but they're not student facing, they're university facing. So the transcripts that we upload are to go externally to the schools the student applies to. If a student wants to see their transcript, they can see all their grades on my backpack, right? And then like your actual transcript will give out.
You can always come and request an unofficial transcript at any time.
Yeah, yeah.
In terms of test scores, we get copies of the students' test scores, so we populate them in MyLearning for the purposes of research and for student and parent information. Students and families are responsible for sending test scores to colleges that they're applying to. We don't do that.
Yeah.
So we get a spreadsheet that has all the test scores, and we upload them when we get them, and that's for informational and research purposes. But one more time for the people in the back, students and families are responsible for sending test scores to colleges and universities.
And this will not be the last time you hear us say that. And it will come up again at every other program from now until the end of time.
Yeah.
Okay? All right. So at this time,
So we're going to introduce Dr. Am I making that up? I'm sorry.
you can. I thought you said if you want me to.
I do. We're going to introduce James Massey, who is the Director of Undergraduate Admissions at University of Maryland at College Park. College Park is the flagship institution for the state of Maryland. He's served at the university for over 17 years in various administrative roles throughout the Office of Undergraduate Admissions. James is a Terp with graduate studies in education policy and leadership at Maryland. He oversees the admissions process at the university for over 50,000 plus applications, which includes freshman, transfer, and international admissions. He's also responsible for the oversight of the Merit Scholarship awarding process at Maryland. They give out over $30 million in merit scholarships every year. In addition to his administrative responsibilities, he serves on the State Financial Aid Advisory Committee at the Maryland Higher Education Commission. And he also serves on several University System of Maryland committees, including the University System's Residency Policy and Protocol Committee and the Middle College Task Force. He's also on the executive board of the Potomac and Chesapeake Association for College Admissions Counseling. That's a long way of saying our regional professional organization, which Chris and I are also a member of. And it's a regional arm of the National Association of College Admissions Counseling. He has served on the executive board of PCACAC, which is actually not the worst acronym. The West Coast is WACAC. Of PCACAC for over 12 years and has remained active within the national organization since the beginning of his career. James has also continued to be a sought-after presenter and facilitator at numerous international, national, regional, and local conferences during his career in higher education. His current research continues to investigate educational access and successful educational outcomes for traditionally underrepresented communities. We are so thrilled to have him here. Like I said, it's the flagship institution, and we're happy to have him. So please welcome James.
Hello, everybody. Good evening. Good evening. It's such a pleasure to be here with you, and thank you so much to your team for inviting me to come out. And congratulations to our students. Wow, wow, wow. It's time. It's time. To tell our tutors, it's time. And to our parents too, it's time. But this process, can really be a lot less daunting by just looking at some of the things that you're kind of getting in the mail, having good conversations with colleagues like myself, other folks in admission offices. That's our job. Our job is there to literally talk to you, be able to share information with you, and make this process as easy as possible. And so there's no question that
James, I'm sorry, can you be a little bit louder?
A little bit louder.
Yeah.
I am recovering from a cold, so I'm going to try to project out. But there's no question that is too little, to ask. There's no question that you should be shy about asking any of our admission professionals. And also think about our financial aid officers as well. Our financial aid officers are also there to help you with the FAFSA, to answer questions that you may have about planning for the financial responsibility of going to college as well. So never think that there's any question that's too small to ask. So the presentation that I have is really kind of some things that the folks here at Sandy Springs have already covered, to be quite honest with you. They told you some of the good things about visiting, things you should be thinking about, what should be on your radar at this time. But I want to make sure that I kind of dig a little bit deeper into it so that you can really kind of hear from myself, on behalf of all of our good colleagues in admissions, those things that really matter, those things that are important. Some of those things that some of our students and families may take for granted, but this, again, is not the time to be shy. This is the time to really shine. You want to share all those things that are important to you. I often tell our students and our families, the rule of thumb should be, if it's important to you, it's important to us. So if you're doing things outside of the school, of course, if you're taking leadership and those types of things in school, share that. But if you're doing things in your community, if you're active in social organizations, if you're doing things in your faith-based communities, share those things with us. The rule of thumb for our students should be how you're spending your time outside the classroom is what you're sharing with us. Because if it's important to you, again, it's important to us. So it just kind of gives you an overview of some of the things that we're going to cover. We're going to talk about how to get started, some resources, the college search process, thinking ahead about the senior year, fall and spring, and then of course exploring the best fit and visiting campus. So in getting started, most of you are already active. Like, who is not in any organization at this point? Anybody. Not in any organization. That's great. You'd be surprised how many places I go and I see a hand kind of creep up, and then the parents kind of pulling the hand back down. Don't say that. That's not the one to raise your hand for. But think about how you're spending your time. For our students, it's not necessarily about, I'm in 25 organizations. That's not necessarily what we're looking for. We're looking for quality over quantity. What do you do in that organization? How long have you been involved in that organization? Do you play a significant role? Everybody can't be president. Everybody knows this. But whatever role that you're playing, that's significant to you. It's important to you. And you have to figure out, how do I express this to somebody who's reading this application? Or how do I express this to somebody that I really, really like doing this? This is what gets me going. I look forward to doing this after school. Or I look forward to doing this once a year with this particular organization. Share those things. That's important to us. Taking classes and things that are fun. Here we go. So, the myth out there is, how many APs can I take in 1 year, and how many can I squeeze on my transcript to make myself look good? That's not what we're looking for. What we're looking for are students that are successful in their classes. We want students to make smart academic decisions. What that means is, if you're taking on all APs, let's just say, in a particular curriculum, and you're not doing well in them, that's not going to look good to an academic or a professional in admissions that's reviewing your application. You want to make smart academic decisions. If you have a particular class or a particular subject that you really enjoy, challenge yourself there. Because in most of those cases, you're going to do well because you really do enjoy that particular subject matter. Or if you're having a challenge with it, you're going to seek out the resources so that you can continue to do well. We want students that are performing well and that are challenging themselves. Studying hard and getting good grades, easy breezy. Okay? But again, picking the right courses, picking those courses, working with your counselors to make sure that you're taking the things that mean something to you. Taking on a challenge. How many students are working? Anybody working? Part-time, couple hours a week? Very good. Share that. Some people say, oh, yeah, I work a couple of hours. Share that. Again, how you're spending your time outside the classroom. It may help an admission professional be able to understand why you may not have tons of activities because you're actually working. And so when we ask for the resume, we ask for the extracurricular activities, we mean it. Share with us everything about what you're doing outside the classroom. Okay. Again, under extracurricular, quality over quantity. We want to see what you're doing. Very important to us. Choose something that you really throw yourself into. By this point, you probably have narrowed some things down. There's some things that you probably have done for several years. How many have been involved with some type of activity or a hobby or perhaps sports or playing an instrument for more than 2 years? Lots of hands. Absolutely. That's something you should be sharing more information with us because you've been spending more time about it. Volunteering. It's not just about the hours. It's about what you're actually doing. Tell us about what you're doing in your volunteer and community service activities. We're always looking to see what our students are doing And you'd be surprised at the things you can connect with at the institutions of your choice as well to continue with those efforts. So your academics. Establish a positive relationship with your school counselor. Aha! How many are still kind of working on that? You can be honest.
Just checking.
Parents, you'd be surprised at larger functions when I go and I ask that question, like, how many don't have a good relationship with your counselor? Hands go up. And when those hands go up, it doesn't mean the counselor's been mean to me or they slapped me on the hand with a ruler. That doesn't happen anymore. But it does mean that perhaps the counselor's new. Maybe the student doesn't know them. In some cases, they're at a place in a school where, honestly, the college process is not number one. So if you're in a place and in a particular school where you do have dedicated professionals that are working with your children and with students, that's a fabulous thing. There are lots of people that would love to have that. For our students, I encourage you, make the best of those relationships. Get to know your counselor. Talk with them, stop by, share things with them. Because when it's time to write that letter, they're going to bat for you. Always remember that. Understanding course selection process. Again, picking the right course is very important. Building positive academic relationships with your teachers. The teachers play a big role in this. You have to have that letter of recommendation from your teacher. How many students are thinking right now that you kind of know what teacher you're going to ask? Okay? How many are still thinking about it? Okay? Use the rest of this year to identify who it is that you're going to ask to write that letter, because that letter is just as important as your school counselor letter. Inquiring about PSATs, your counselors have this covered, but some scholarships are tied to your taking and doing well on those tests. So those tests count. Be very careful about that. Okay, stay involved in activities and organizations you've joined. Who is still looking for something to get involved with? Anybody? Still looking to find something to get involved with? Okay. So you put your hand up. What kinds of things are interesting to you?
Oh man.
You know these people.
I like music.
Okay.
I like interesting stuff. like psychology things.
Okay. Psychology.
Are interesting.
Okay.
So I wouldn't do that professionally.
So the challenge to you, though, is to kind of think deeply about some things, just a couple of things that you're interested in, and find that one thing that you can really commit to. And be able to say, I'm going to spend some time, I'm going to get with this organization and see what they're all about. It might not be something that you commit yourself to forever, but it may be something that you can commit yourself to and really kind of invest yourself and be able to write about it in your college application. So finding that something. Junior year performance is extremely important. For parents, can I say that again? Okay. Junior year performance is extremely important. So let's think about the college process. When you submit your application, for most colleges, if you're going early action, you have to submit your application, let's say by about November 1. I'm just picking it out of the blue. When you submit it by November 1, we can't see your grades. We can see everything that you've done through your junior year, but we will not be able to see where you are in your senior year. So when you're thinking about that, for our students that are all juniors here, what year is going to be the most important? You're in it. And so when people keep telling you, your junior year is very important, make sure you're doing well your junior year, make sure you land well your junior year, we're not making it up. This is the truth. Most colleges are going to look and make that decision based upon where you land and what your decision is in terms of the courses you're going to take for your senior year. So all of that helps us to land with our admission decision. So continuing to challenge yourselves. Senioritis should never exist. We ask for the final transcript. It's like the big aha moment. Yes, we want to see it. Even though you have a decision, institutions are still going to take a look at that final transcript to hopefully say, yes, we made the best decision, or we might have to make a phone call. So make sure that you're doing your best in your senior year. Over the summer, consider enrolling in academic courses or perhaps summer programs. How many are thinking about summer programs? Very good. Any programs in particular?
Maryland has some programs.
I'm not advertising that tonight, but anybody thinking like a more of a hobby or like a music or arts type of program? Okay, anybody doing research? Okay, perhaps taking courses for credit? Okay, very good. All of these are great opportunities. There's no one that's better than the other. So that's good to know. For institutions, challenging yourself above and beyond, that's what we're looking for. Going to college fairs. How many have been to college fairs? Okay. How many have not been to a college fair yet? Okay. For those that haven't been, what are you looking for? Like, are you excited about going, or you're a little, yeah? Maybe? Okay, for those that have gone, what have you noticed? Or what have you found out about yourself? Yes?
I have expensive taste.
Okay. What do you know about yourself? You like that? Anybody else? What have you learned about yourself? Yes.
It's better when you know what you want to ask.
Okay, very good. Knowing more about yourself. Anybody else? Okay. Some of the things that you're going to learn is how to narrow down your search. Do you want to go to an institution that's in a major city? Do you want to be in more of an urban setting? Big school, small school? These are all the things that you're going to kind of learn as you're searching through. Sometimes the best thing to learn is what you don't want. Maybe you don't want to go to a school that's perhaps 1,000 students in the freshman class. You want a big school, like a Maryland or like another institution. These are things that you learn about yourself. Making sure you're registering for the ACT or SAT. How many have taken it, at least one of those tests? Okay, who hasn't taken it at all yet, but planning on it? Okay, very good. So knowing that you can take it several times, some people take it one time, but you have to know what works for you. Most institutions, like a Maryland, we're going to look at all of your test scores and give you the very best credit for everything that you've taken. So that's very important to note. Okay, the senior year. So we're past junior year, and here we are in the fall. These are the things that you need to be thinking about. For our students, take a look at this. Is there anything on here that jumps out at you? Take a close look. Deadlines, why?
If you're doing early action, like you have to start doing that in September, and like you gotta just have a plan going into senior year to make the most of your time.
Very good. Anyone else? What jumps out at you? Anything else? What is it?
Like talking with your counselors, working with your counselors and teachers.
Yes. So you're going to spend a lot of time working with your counselors. One-on-one, you're going to go back and forth at sometimes, but you have to make sure that you're making the best use of your time with your counselors and making the best use of your time on your own. Very, very important. You want to come prepared. You want to make sure you have your list. You want to have your schools. You want to know where you're applying to. You want to start the application, know what the deadlines are. It's important for you to be as organized as possible so that you can have the very best outcome as possible. Application and financial aid deadlines. Why do you think deadlines are important? Any of our students? Why are deadlines important?
Some applications aren't eligible like after a certain date.
Very true. Anyone else? Yes?
It's like the absolute, like, last time to submit something for that deadline.
Absolutely.
Okay.
One of the main things is, one more hand, yes?
If you don't meet it, you're going to be in a lot of trouble.
Thank you. By not meeting a deadline, you literally could be leaving money on the table. You could be leaving a great opportunity for admission on the table at a competitive institution. You could be missing out on perhaps getting into honors college or a special program. Those deadlines, with so many competitive applicants, institutions have to adhere by these deadlines to make really, really tough decisions in a very competitive pool. And so I implore all of you, make sure that you meet those deadlines and make sure that you know which deadlines that you're looking to meet. Sometimes some students are completing applications, but they're not even aware that they missed the deadline for scholarships. And so then you're saying, I want to be considered for scholarships, and that was 3 months ago. So ask those questions on the front end before you even submit your application. Is there anything else that I need to be aware of? research the websites and make sure that you know exactly what that particular school is asking for your process. For spring, at this point, you have your application in, right? You might have to call, you might have to check to make sure your application is complete. Most institutions are going to ask the students to manage themselves through the process. That's very important. You're not going to have the luxury of your counselor perhaps saying, hey, you didn't submit your FAFSA, or hey, we're missing your transcript. You may have that on this end, but most institutions are going to send you an email, and it's going to be important for you to continue to check those emails and make sure that you're adhering to what's missing. Check your email. How many students are not checking their email? How many students are like email? Here we go. Make sure you're checking your emails. Most institutions are communicating via email. Parents, a lot of things are not coming in the mail, so definitely encourage your students to continue to monitor your email very closely. Finishing on a strong note, that's very important. Again, we are looking at those final transcripts, so you want to make sure that you're putting your best foot forward in your senior year.
I've learned this, but I'm going to do my best. Regarding email, do you recommend that kids create their own a new email account for college applications?
Okay, I'll stare at the question again. Do you recommend that students create their own and another email account? Create an account that you're going to check. That's the most important thing. Make sure, though, that you're not responding from an email that says something like, I don't know. I think of the worst one I've heard. You know, rock and roll till I die. You know, something like that. Professional. Your name dot your last name, dot last name is fine. But make sure it's something that you are checking. For parents, please don't put your email and your name and your social security and your date of birth. We know. We see it all the time. So make sure that you have the correct information for the student. Typically, a lot of that information is used to match up the applications. If we do have mismatched information, it can allow for a student to not receive a decision. So very important to make sure demographic information is correct, and that we have an accurate email account. May 1 is still May 1 in terms of students making their final decision. So we want to get everything in your hands at least 30 days prior. That means by about, I would say, April 1, you should have all your decisions, you should have financial aid information, merit scholarships if applicable, and then you'll be able to sit down with all of your decisions and make the best choice for your students. Best fit cases we kind of talked about, but again, these are questions that students should be asking. When you're looking at schools and you're starting to narrow them down, or you're looking at schools you've been admitted to and trying to make a decision, what do you want? This is the time when students can really ask themselves, what is it that I want? Now, parents, you might be asking, what is it that I want? Because I'm paying. And that's fine too, but it is a family decision. But for students, this is really that time to ask yourself some really critical questions. You're going to spend 4 years of your life at this place. You're going to be an alum of this particular institution, and it should be something about it, or some things about it, that really align with who you are. Not necessarily just who you are now, but who you will grow to be. And so when you walk that campus, find something that you can say, you know what, that's really part of who I am. And again, landing with visiting campuses, I can't tell you how important it is to walk the campus. You almost, and I would say you can't, unless resources are a challenge, make a good decision without seeing it and almost feeling it. And some of our parents that may have had students before have gone through the process, yourselves, you might understand what I'm saying, but you have to be able to see, can I see myself sitting in this dining room? Literally. Do I see myself going to that library? Will I be sitting under this tree? Or at least walking past this tree? But you have to be able to find that institution that makes sense for you. It's not the name, it's not necessarily how far or how close, but it's what makes sense and what feels good to you, the student. These are things that I would say just to kind of think about. If an interview is offered, some do, some don't. You'd be surprised at the schools that don't necessarily offer an interview. See if you can sit in on a class. You know, you don't want to just go to the open house and take the tour and then leave. See if you can sit in on a class, if you can talk to a current student, maybe talk to a faculty member. These are all things, again, that'll give you a good feel for what that institution's about. Eat on the campus. It sounds silly, but is the food good? If the food is bad, you don't want to go there. You know, you got expensive taste. And then lastly, never be afraid to ask questions. Very seriously, you would think that some questions are just too small to ask, or people always ask that, or I don't want to be the one to say it. There's questions that you have that 10 other people have. So ask the question. Go one-on-one. Go to the financial aid office, to the admissions office, but make sure you get the information that you need to make the very best decision. Make sure that if it's financial, if it's post-decision release, at open houses, always make sure you get, again, the information that's necessary for you. So for all of our juniors, I wish you the best of luck. We'll have some time at the end for Q&A, and thank you so much for coming.
So next up, I'm a little upset because I don't have a bio for him, but I'm totally gonna make it up. We have Thomas Parrish, brother of Maeve Parrish. That's it, I joke. I'm a younger sibling, and people are always like, "This is Kendrick's sister." I'm like, sometimes people call me Candace. So I have a preference for the younger siblings. But Thomas Parrish, who is Sandy Spring alum, he graduated last year. He's a first year at Hobart and William Smith College, where he's deciding between American Studies and anthropology as a major. Thomas plays club soccer there. He was a soccer player here, goalie for us, and just is lovely and is taking time out of his break to come talk to us, which I greatly appreciate because I sent an email that was like, "Hey, you around?" So I appreciate having him here. He's here to talk about, you know, he just completed the process, talking about it from the student perspective, what it's like going through that, balancing all the different things that he did. He was also on Torch for several years. He was also did the Student Diversity Leadership Conference. So again, someone who's really involved, but also trying to manage the college process, and he's gonna talk a little bit about that. I said him, do you have a question? Yes. So please welcome Thomas.
I appreciate the bio. He comes up and has like a 5-minute bio.
Give me some things.
So I'm Thomas. I only graduated last year, so I'm just recently out of Sandy Spring. It's like hearing the word alum next to my name, so it sounds a little weird. But basically, I'm here to say that this process is possible. It might be stressful at times. It's maybe a lot of work, but you're gonna get through it. So on the list of questions, I believe the person you asked was, how did I choose my college list? So I started by thinking out like a list of my own. Like what do I want in colleges? So it kind of boiled down to 3 things: location, education, and life. So for location, like where do I want to be? So I typically wanted to be about a day's drive from home, so I can come home if I want to, but not necessarily too close. So I wanted a school that was a small school. I like the small feel here on campus, so I wanted to stay at a small school. I didn't want to be in a big city. As I said before, you also want to know what you don't want. And for me, I wanted to be a little bit out of a city, have a little bit of green space. So I wanted a small school, I wanted a liberal arts school, I wanted a little bit out of the city. So that's my location. So that narrows down a lot of schools already. There were 3,000 schools, as Candace said before. So it's kind of overwhelming when you first start the process, right? Like, how are you going to choose one institution? Well, you start by narrowing it down. So there's my location. Education, what I want to study. I want a liberal arts college. I'm a humanities guy, so I was looking at schools that focused on more humanities. I knew I wanted to do American Studies or anthropology, so I looked at schools that had programs in anthropology and American Studies. That narrows it down even more. I wanted a small class, which comes with a small school, so that's my education. And then life. You're not just picking an education, you're not just picking a place to live, but what are you going to do when you're not in class? So you look at clubs. At my college right now, there's an outdoor club, a recreation club that focuses on hiking and exploring the Finger Lakes region. And that's something I've always been into, is hiking and being outside. So that was a big draw, finding a club. But I've also found some colleges that clubs where you design your own plane. So if you're an engineering guy or girl, then sometimes like clubs like that can be a huge draw. So look at the clubs. Also look at sports. If you're an athlete but don't necessarily want to play varsity, then look at what sports are available. Also look at like the people. One of the things that when I was visiting colleges, look how people interact with each other. There were some colleges I went to where everybody was sitting at their computer, just behind a screen, not talking to anybody. And while that might not be, it's just one like environment, it is a little bit of a red flag if nobody is smiling, everybody's just sitting by themselves. And you laugh, but like it's true. Like there were colleges like that, and I ended up choosing not to apply or not go there because of it. Adversely, some schools are very sociable, and you go to get food or and people are talking away, and you see them in the cafeteria talking, everybody's like, having a good time, and that can be a good thing. But if you want something in the middle, look for that too. But look how people interact with each other on campus. You're only there one day or a couple hours, and you can't see everything, but look at what you do see and process that. So you have a location, a list of ideas about location, you have your education, and what you want in your social life. That narrows down your college list incredibly right away. If you know what you're looking for and what you're not looking for, it can make the process a whole lot easier, narrowing down these 3,000 schools to a manageable list. And even then, you're going to have a lot of colleges left to choose from. And that's when you start diving deeper into it, and looking at the colleges, and interviewing, and applying, and then making your final decisions from there. So what was the second question?
Managing the process and your homework.
Okay, so managing the process. It is kind of taking another class. You know, you have a lot of work to do. You have research to do, you have writing to do, and so it is worth figuring out where you're going to fit that into your schedule. It can be a lot. The hardest part and most stressful part for me was the fact of narrowing down what colleges I want to apply to. And that took more time than I think anything else. So every couple of days, I would just sit down for an hour or two and just go through college lists and websites and look at information here and there and see what spoke to me. And I had an Excel document where I'll just copy and paste college names. And just if something was interesting, I'll throw it in a list. If something got my attention, I'll throw it in a list. And then after I got this bigger list, I went back down and went through those colleges more specifically. I dove deeper into those websites and chose whether or not I applied based on a second wave. So my whole college process was kind of done in waves. Right? So I had my big list, and then I did a second wave. There's two windows of application. You have one in November and one in January. So my first load, I did the colleges I really wanted to get into, more of my reach schools. I applied in the first wave. And I saw the results of that, and it saved money because I was applying to less colleges. And if I got into those, then I could be done. But I didn't get into all the colleges I wanted to. So second wave, I applied to more of my not safety schools, my target schools. And so my target schools and safety schools were my second wave applications. And ultimately, I made a decision based on the second wave. But if you keep it over time, you do the process over the long run. I know you guys aren't applying yet, but just start putting feelers out there. Start looking at colleges. Speaking directly to the students. This is your college. This is where you're going to be. Just start doing some Google searches. It won't hurt. You can only do, if you want your 20 minutes, just hop on Google or any other college source search website and just start seeing what you find. You know, you can start seeing what intrigues you, what doesn't, and then with that information you can move forward. Just start small steps. It's a lot. It really is. But small steps over the long run make it really easy.
How did you balance your input and what you wanted with your parents and what they wanted?
That's always a question. So I had a very enthusiastic mother. She was ready to get out there, and she was great. I went out there and got an email from her, hey, check out the school, or she would get the college books online or whatever. And she was ready to be there with me. But at the end of the day, she knew that was my process, and she would suggest these schools and would let me do a lot of the hard work. My dad was more hands-off, just kind of let me do my own thing. But they ultimately trusted me to make a decision. And it is my school, and they understood that it was my decision, and that's how I felt about it too. So for the parents out there, I know it's hard. I know it's hard to let your students make their own decision. It's such a huge one. And especially my mom struggled with that a little bit. But to the students now, it is your school. This is where you're going to be. This is going to be your life for 4 years and set you up for your adult life after. So consider that. When you're looking at colleges, consider places you want to be, not necessarily where your parents want you to be. Not saying that the advice isn't important. My dad went to a small school, my mom went to a big school, so I had both of those opinions. So it is helpful to have the opinions of parents as well. So don't ignore everything they say. But parents also understand that it's the student's school. Last one?
Just like lessons you learned, things you would do, things you would do differently.
Okay. So I think something I did well is I picked a good school. You know, I'm very happy at my school. I had a great first semester. I am very glad at the school that I ended up choosing. That being said, I was kind of flying by the seat of my pants the whole time. You know, I was never really sure exactly what college I wanted to go to. I never really had like one thing in mind that I wanted. It was kind of hectic, the whole process. That's how it's going to be. It's going to be trial and error. You're going to figure it out as you go, and that's just part of it. One thing I do think I would change is whoever said expensive taste. That was me too. I liked the higher end schools. So I think I would have applied to a more like financially diverse parts of the schools. Like you can look at financial aid and try to predict it, but often you won't know until you get your acceptance letter, or sometimes even after that. So you really have to like anticipate what they're going to give you and how it's going to work. And it ended up being okay. Like I ended up getting a financial situation that I liked, but it was because I reached out to the school and they ended up giving me more money because of it. But I would have encouraged a more diverse. I would have encouraged my past self to look more financially diverse as well. I found a lot of good schools that I liked, a lot of expensive schools I liked as well. Like, so you really have to look at like a lot of factors when you're making that list. Don't look at money at first. You know, just look at schools you want to go to. Look at schools that inspire you. Look at schools that get you excited to go there. Don't look at the price tag. Because then if you look at schools by what you know you like, then you can adjust accordingly. That list of attributes you like you're gonna have to make some compromises. You're never gonna find the perfect school that has every single one of those perfectly. But understand like what you're willing to compromise with and what you're not. And I think that I was able to do that well. And I found a school that I really enjoy being to. And I hope that all you guys do as well. Thanks so much.
And next up we have a parent, also going to make up another bio. So we've got Brian Murray, who is the father of Olivia Murray, who's class of 2017, which is my first year here, and Luke Murray, who is class of 2015. Luke is at Elon. Olivia is a junior at the College of William & Mary. Brian is also a former board member and an avid Sandy City. Are you current board member?
Neither.
Oh, I swear I thought Brian was. This is what happens when you make things up.
Dr. Murray?
Very Rear Admiral, right? Professor Murray. But also, you may have caught Brian out on watching women's soccer here. He's a fan, even though his girl is gone. Or she's gone from us. She's still around. But Brian has been gracious, having gone through it twice, to come and share from the parent perspective. I also saw him make a couple faces while Thomas was talking, so he might have some different thoughts. But he's just going to talk a little bit about the parent perspective and managing it from there. And then we're going to have a Q&A for all three of our speakers after that. So, Mr. Murray.
Thank you. Good evening. And welcome. I will say, I remember when my son was going through this, I came, and I will say that when I left, my head was spinning more than when I came in. So I'm going to try to give you the parent perspective, So all the things Thomas said sounded great. Some of those are just not going to match up with our parent experience. It is a very interesting and overwhelming experience, and you would think, well, if I went through it once, the second time would be much better. It is not. If you have two kids, you know kid A and kid B, same roof, can be totally different human beings. Well, shocking, the process was totally different. I think the first question is what, can you read that first question, young lady? So you can prompt me?
Yes. What were your concerns when you were starting the process?
So my concerns were a list. And then quickly I determined that mindset and my list was 25 years ago. And so the first thing I had to do as a parent is get rid of all those preconceived ideas and start doing research, and start doing my own research. To find out, you know, I would like to think that you all think that you know your kid better than anybody. So you kind of get an idea of what you think your kid would like, and you start educating them. And that's really important, because the thoughts I had turned out to be completely wrong. The process that I went through was nothing like what you guys go through now. My process was typewriter and, which you don't even know what, and whiteout, and if I knew one person that submitted 5 applications and we looked at him like he was crazy. So that whole era needs to be put aside, because I'm old, and you need to revisit what is a Common App. What is, you know, I heard throughout the process, and I have a son right now that is working in the admissions department. So he's seeing the back end. And when I went to school, it was score. What score did you get? That limited you where you were going to go, and your essay. And it's so much more. I would think you would agree. It is the totality of the individual. I mean, I was talking to the president of George Washington University, and he said to me, because we were talking about SAT scores, he said something that I thought was brilliant. We want to see the 4 years of a high school student over the 4 hours of a test. And I found that incredibly profound. It is your work process over the years versus those incredibly tense moments of doing an SAT. So from a parent perspective, this was overwhelming. And to me, my wife and I, Thomas talked about his lovely mother. My wife was much more overt. I was just intense, but I was letting her take all the heat. Well, I said that. Some people at this school may have viewed us as active parents. Some may say we were pains in the neck, but we were asking questions. That is really important too from a parent perspective. Ask questions. I have a son and I have a daughter. The communication factor is dramatically different between those two. Son, how are things going? I got it. Do you really? You don't, but that's okay. And my daughter, much more interactive. So those things were the things that really were difficult for us going through this process. One of the real important things is that woman right there. Okay, for us as a family, we were incredibly connected to the college counselor. And therefore my children were connected to the college counselor. And that was the bridge sometimes between us and our kids. That was the way to form a team to be successful. And sometimes to talk our kids off the ledge, and sometimes to talk the parents off the ledge. So if you have a really strong relationship, plus the college counselors, you should actively get your student to talk to them. And they'll understand your student. We spend a lot of time talking to them, so they know what what our counselor knew what we wanted and what was important to us. And the intersection of those kind of, proof is in the pudding. My son and daughter go to two great institutions. Couldn't be happier of their selection. Neither one was on any list I thought of. So, and my daughter is now in her junior year and couldn't be happier. But the one thing we didn't do was go eat. And as a vegetarian, my daughter is miserable because the College of William and Mary is a fine state institution and doesn't really care about the food. So, but that was really important that we made that commitment to the family and our college council. What's the other question? I just wandered.
What was important to you as a parent in looking at a college?
As important to me was the interaction of a university. When I reached out, how quickly did they reach back? How thorough were they with answers? When I walked on the campus, could I see my child there? It's a really odd, at least I found it really odd. My experience was I wanted to go to Cornell University. I was waitlisted. And my college counselor said, you got to apply to your state university. Sure. And I went to Rutgers University, intending to transfer after my first semester. My mother called me in October and said, you got to fill out the forms. And I said, for what? She said, because you're going to transfer out. I'm not transferring out, I'm here. I love it. So the thought of walking through that process, what you guys are doing, nothing that I ever did. I think the most important thing from a school is to feel the campus, to go on tours with your kids, to ask questions of the financial aid, of the admissions. I mean, both of my children hated me because I called, I think one was the psychology department and one was the kinesiology department, and said, hey, my kids are thinking about going to your school for this particular thing. I asked a bunch of questions. There were some schools that never responded to me. There were other schools that responded to me within the day and said, would you like to set up a call? The other thing for both of my children, I wanted support, academic support was important. But once again, my thought process was wrong. I thought small school, more support, big school, no support. I had a conversation with somebody at Wisconsin, University of Wisconsin, which is, I think, bigger than Maryland. And they had a treasure trove of student support. And then we did a tour at a very small school in Pennsylvania, and the person said, no, we don't have that, no, we don't do that. So understanding what kind of support my kids could possibly get if they needed it was really important too. And I love the statement of there's no small or stupid question, because I just started bombarding people with questions everywhere. And to me, that understanding my concerns and getting responses was really big.
And then just lastly, we heard from Thomas about how he balanced his parents' input with what he wanted. How did you allow them to navigate the process while making sure that they were navigating the process?
The hardest thing ever. For me. All you perfect parents. But for me, it's that you're beginning the process of letting go. And part of that is to make sure they're responsible for their next step. But I can hear my wife's words, but there should be a scaffolding underneath in case they fall, right? So that's the hardest, dancing that tightrope is the hardest thing. And that's, once again, a call to Candace. Candace, I think Olivia's got her essay, but we don't really know. Can you go There are lots of times from parents' perspective, at least from my perspective, is not always handling the questions correctly, because my anxiety leaks out. So my sense of panic, or you gotta get this done, gets lost between the relationship between me and my kids. And a third party makes it so much easier. I think too, after my son went through the process, I think the thing I learned the most was there is a place for every single student at Sandy Spring. And it'll be okay, you say to your kids, but you need to look in the mirror and go, it'll be okay. And there will be a place that they go to and they will thrive. I would say something else, Tom, because I have this in my head too. There are going to be kids that are going to go and not thrive, but that's okay. You can decide after a semester or a year, this isn't the place. I thought it was. This made so much sense, but I've changed. I made the decision at 17. I'm now at 18 or 19. It's not a mistake. It's a realization and a growth. So I always used to say there was going to be a place. There's going to be a place for every single Sandy Springs student, and they're going to do well. And now I'm kind of not at the total back end, but I've seen that this place has prepared my children incredibly well for the next step. And for me, that's really comforting. How I dance that line of letting go, but making sure, it's the old Ronald Reagan, trust but verify. Okay, I think words the kids should know with Ronald Reagan. But trust but verify. And don't allow the whole energy and the dynamic of school drive the anxiousness. There is a timeline, deadline, and your college counselor should help the kid, but help the parent understand each one of these steps. You don't climb Everest in a day, you take your time. So, to me, that's my little advice.
So like Candace said, at this time we're going to have some time for some Q&A for our panel. So if you all just want to bring your chairs and just line them up right here. And
I think they're just going to stand up.
but do you want to stand or sit? Yeah. Okay, I will just come on. You know, I mean, I turned it off so you can come in front of the screen. That's big. So yeah, so it's a lineup. Add in any questions?
On the whiteboard.
Yes.
Turn right, please. To the left.
And she says she just spent time with her daughter, and the Common App, Facebook and Instagram, and YouTube and TikTok account, because university now, the top colleges are using their stalker algorithms to see how much she likes their students. Can you
Instagram and TikTok.
The question was about social media and how much yeah. So it's interesting with social media. That's a good question to ask, but you're probably going to get a plethora of different answers from different colleges. There are some colleges that use, as part of the review process, something that's called demonstrated interests. You've probably heard this term before, some. Demonstrated interest can manifest in signing up for a listserv. So you've gone on and said, yes, I want to join the mailing list. You know, you filled out an inquiry card. Some have showed up for a visit, an open house program, maybe as a sophomore, or maybe in your junior year. Others may have seen a representative at a college fair, okay? So these are all fair representations of a student and or a family saying, yes, we're interested in getting more information. We're not saying we're coming to your school, but we're saying we want to get information from your institution to learn more about your school. Now, in terms of the stalkers of the world, That's not something that most institutions engage in. I can't speak for all. There are some that I'm absolutely sure they may look on social media or say, well, some students include, this is my handle, or whatever it is, on their resumes. You'd be surprised at how some students fill out their resumes. Social media for most students is a part of what they do every day, some, but for others, it's not. So it depends upon the information that you share. There are some admission offices that would say, well, if you shared it, we're gonna take a look at it. But for many admission offices, and the one I've been in for many, many years, that's not something that we actively engage in. So the demonstrated interest piece, like you interacting, or even if you're waitlisted, let's say, and you keep kind of saying, I'm interested, those types of things most institutions will take into account if they have to make tough decisions. But who you are in your social media life, most like to consider that to be private.
I just wanted to ask, I've heard different things from different schools. So the college visit, does it count in any way toward helping you get in? So some people tell me if you don't sign in, it doesn't have like a ticket that you would get. Like as if they would know you're more interested because you've shown up than not.
That kind of falls under that demonstrated interest. So if you're going to a visit, most colleges will have a check-in station, or you'll come and say, I'm here. Some are going electronic now, where you actually can sign in, as soon as you hit campus, and it recognizes that you're there. But it's always good to just kind of check in and say, I'm here. If for nothing else, it just helps for, managing the actual day's program. But there are some institutions that they do count that very heavily in terms of demonstrated interest. Again, if you're showing that I'm interested enough to make the journey to come to your campus, for some institutions that may mean something, whether it's in their decision making or if they're making fine distinctions and things like waitlist, those students that may be more interested than others.
It's also important to note that not everyone can go visit every school. That it's not free. Kids have to miss school. There's a lot of so there are other ways to demonstrate interest that don't include a plane ticket. So now in terms of once a student is admitted and trying to make a final decision, every university has an admitted students day. And so if you haven't, or a weekend or whatever it is, if you haven't been to the campus before you applied, that's a great time to go. But by no means are we saying that you need to get on every campus that you might possibly be interested in. That's just not reasonable. Colleges will come here, reps come here. We had 120 reps this fall. That's a way to demonstrate interest, showing up at those visits. We're gonna go, Georgetown Prep's gonna have the college fair that they have every year. So there are ways to demonstrate interest that don't require a plane ticket or a train ticket or a 3-hour drive. But if you're looking at College Park and you haven't come, they might have some questions, right? If you're looking at American and you haven't been on the campus, right? So it's a balancing act. But yeah, and some schools don't care. Some schools, Georgetown says, you applied, that demonstrates your interest. And they don't care how many times you've been or who you talked to. So it's another time to ask the question.
Not a bad question to ask.
So as a director of admissions, how do you view a student that may, in their senior year, only take the classes that they need to graduate, or take the classes they need to graduate in one interesting class to them, and then otherwise may fill their time working or doing an internship or doing other things? How versus a student that goes into their senior year taking multiple APs or just multiple classes that interest them?
Sure. Did everyone hear that question? The question was, how do you view a student in their senior year if they make a decision to take the required courses that are necessary for graduating, and perhaps they fill their time doing something else, whether it's working or another activity or something else outside of taking additional rigorous academic courses? So the first thing that we're looking for is to make sure that all students are meeting the requirements for the state in terms of getting your high school degree. We want to make sure that you're taking 4 years of this and 4 years of that and so on. If a student has taken advantage of that and they've done everything they needed to do at their school, we want to know basically how you're choosing to spend your time. The challenge is if a student, let's say, takes 2 or 3 courses and then it's just a blank transcript. There's no explanation, there's no filling in of the blank, or this is the activity I'm doing, or I'm working, or whatever the case is, that leaves us with a question mark. And so the best thing I can tell you is you don't want to ever leave an admissions officer or an institution that you're applying to with questions. If it's something that you feel like, I need to provide a little more information, there's always a section on the application that says if you have any additional information to share that you think will affect the admission decision or the committee's review of your application, speak now. So always make sure that you speak now with those pieces. But as long as you're sharing with us what you're doing, we've seen the trend that a lot of students may be taking classes at a local community college or a four-year institution or going for credit, or they have some other, kind of structured activity they're filling their time, that's fine. If you're working, that's fine as well. But the most important thing is to tell us. But we're concerned that you're continuing the courses that you take that they are challenging. We want you to continue to challenge yourself. That is something we're looking for. But again, we're looking at your grades through the year. But always explain how you're spending your time.
I've heard that binding early decision can help your probability of getting in, but it can simultaneously hurt your likelihood of getting money. Is that true? Is that your experience? Because in theory, if it's a binding early decision, whether they give you money or not, if they accept you, you're coming.
That's true.
So does it really work that way?
Yeah. This is a very interesting question, and you may have had experiences in this too, in processes. But so when you're looking at something like ED, early decision, you're basically saying, I'm applying by this deadline, and if you accept me, I'm coming. That's really it. It's not I'm coming with a caveat of if you give me X dollars, or if I get into honors college, or any other type of anything. If you accept me, I'm coming. And then I'm foregoing other opportunities as well. So I think where it comes into play is that if a family or a student decides to go ED, they get in ED, they're kind of saying yes blindly to a certain extent. I mean, you are saying that I'm prepared financially for this particular institution. I kind of know, how much it's going to cost and what it's going to take to go there. But you may be missing out on other opportunities at other institutions. And so I've kind of had conversations over the years with families that say, well, you know what? I would have probably liked to go EA somewhere because I still have a little more flexibility. I can still weigh my options and figure out, what some of the other options are at other institutions. So I mean, that's just been something over the years that I've heard personally, but it really is, depends upon the situation per family.
Can you explain the difference between the ED, the early decision, and the EA you just said?
Sure. So the early decision, the biggest difference between the two is that it's binding. Meaning that if you're admitted and you apply to early decision or ED to an institution, it says that if you do accept me, that I will come. And I will forego other opportunities, other institutions, and my other applications. If you're early action, you have a little more flexibility. It does mean there's an earlier application deadline, and that institution does say that we will notify you at an earlier timeline. So you would hear, let's say in January or some time frame, depending upon the institution, but you still have opportunity to apply to other places as well.
So is the ED, when you say you're committed, you're saying that's legally binding? I mean, is that considered contractual?
I guess we could say it's ethically binding.
Well, there's an actual agreement that parents, students, and we have to sign.
Right.
You do sign on.
Having said that, there are the times when the school, there are times when financially it just won't work. But what is important to understand is it's not your idea of what works. The school does the calculations based on the financial aid paperwork that you submit. And so if they're saying we can't meet your need, that's one thing. If you're saying I need more money, they may not agree.
So what's the repercussions? Do they A, sue you? Do they B, tell other schools you renege? Is that what happens?
Blackball you, you're never going to go.
You're not going to admissions jail.
But also keeping in mind that when you're talking about early decision, like I tell students, like when you're applying to a school early decision, what you're saying is, if I don't get in here, why am I even bothering? Right? I love this school so much that I don't know why you keep talking to me about other places. Like, and most kids don't feel that way by November 1.
But don't they do it because they look at the percentage acceptance rate and say,
that's not true anymore,
6% or 13, so 13 is better than 6?
Those are things, like some of the myths of the world of admissions, and some may have rung truer maybe even 10, 15, 20 years ago. But nowadays, it's, you know, literally, if I want to go to this school and I know it costs $90,000 a year for me to go there, and we've had a family conversation, and that's feasible, so we're going to go ahead and go for it. Is the probability of getting in easier? It depends on the institution again. Institutions are charged with making a class. So at University of Maryland, for example, I have to produce a class of, let's say, 4,300 students. How we get there is kind of a, really, literally, big picture of putting a puzzle together. It's not everybody that applies by November 1. There are some students that may apply by the final deadline of January 20th that'll gain admission. So it depends upon the institution. Some institutions lean a bit heavier on their ED, others may defer. You may hear some of this language, like you've been deferred to the next pool, meaning they didn't accept you in the ED pool, but they're deferring your application, and you still have a shot at admission against the larger pool. It, again, depends on the institution.
What is University of Maryland doing in an ED situation when a person backs out?
Well, we don't have ED.
Oh, you
We're
don't
only
have
take action. Right. But I mean, just to, I know some folks are kind of curious about this ED thing. Basically, if you, let's say you applied ED and you talk to your counselors and that everybody knows you're going to ED to this particular school, and then you get in, right? You're supposed to contact the other institutions, say thank you so much, we appreciate the consideration. You don't even know at that point, to be quite honest, if you got in or you would have got in, if you would have got in with money or got honors or not got in at all. You're just saying no thank you, and then you would cancel your application. Some may look the other way for a couple of months, and then the processes are just continuing on as they would, and we would know nothing. We don't get a secret list to say that these students got in, but your counselors probably would have a conversation with you. They know that you got in, and then Johnny comes in and says, I also got into, you're waving the flag and saying that we're still kind of continuing with the process. So from our professional association and the ethics that really drive the profession of admissions, we usually tell our families, you know, you need to let those other institutions know so they can properly plan for their class as well.
Yeah.
Okay. This is part of a question for Thomas. So how many, like, what's a reasonable number of schools, or like, what's a ballpark range of a reasonable number of schools to apply to and still manage homework and extracurriculars and like, because I know it takes a lot of time. Anyone can answer this.
Well, each college you apply to has a different length application. So some of them I had to write like one, like 500-word thing. Others I had to write like 4. So it really depends. Also, depends how you break it up. So I applied to 8 schools, I think. I applied to 3 by the first deadline, and then I applied to 5 more on the second deadline. And it was pretty manageable. I paced it out. I did some applications earlier, some the night before. If you paced it out, like 8 was reasonable, but 8 was more than most of my friends. I had one friend who applied to 16 schools. It was a lot. It was a lot of work, and he was spending a lot of time doing applications. It's also a big financial commitment to apply to 15, I think it's 15 schools. So it really depends on what you're comfortable with. If you have a couple of schools that you appreciate and get into, and you want to go there, then focus on those applications. Like, buckle down on those. If you are a little bit more unsure and not sure you're going to end up, it may be worth putting more feelers out there. So I can't say one number because each person is different. I know some people who applied to one school, got in, loved it, having a great time there. Only had to apply to one school. I have other friends who applied to 15, went to school, loved it. So
7 to 10.
That's all that means, is 7 to 10.
The fewer you do, the easier it's going to be and less stressful it's going to be. But I do want to point out that it is possible to apply to more, but the smaller is better.
7 to 10.
Right here.
I actually have a question for Thomas and James, or like 2 questions, one for Thomas, one for James. First for Thomas, like, do you know like of any good college search sites that give you like a good profile of the college that you can like look through with like pictures?
I was on one website a lot, and I'm blanking on the name of it right now. I was thinking of it when I was up here before. I'll look it up to you and get to you after this, but I was on it like a lot, and it gives you like a lot of information about the college and like a summary of it.
Like a little speed dating profile?
Yeah, basically what it is. Yeah, I'll find you afterwards.
You can also use, My Learning does have a college search function that's pretty thorough, and it has links to the websites and different information. So that's a place to start while you're waiting for your email from
And it's one thing, like, there's so many schools out there, and you're gonna find a lot of good websites, but you have to break it down to like the broad search, and then you want to get like deeper into it. So when you get to the schools, I would really recommend like going to the school's website themselves and diving through the website, whether it's like 20 or 30 minutes just on the website, going through things that you want to find. So once you get those like the list of schools, it is really important to go through those websites. You can learn a lot about a school online.
Thank you. And for James, if a student wanted to like defer for a year to take like a gap year between high school and college, does that affect your admissions in a way? Of, like,
That's a good question.
Like, are you more likely, less likely?
When do you let them know? When
Yeah.
do you let the school know?
Yeah, so deferring will not negatively affect your process. Typically for students, if you're thinking about it, you kind of might know now, but some students find out later on that they want to defer. Your admission is your admission. So if you get in, you get scholarships, and let's say you're invited to a special program, and then you decide to defer, there is a process formally for saying I would like to defer, and everything will carry forward for that year. So if you got a scholarship, you would still get the scholarship in that year forward. If you're invited to honors, you're in honors. If you're in engineering, you'll still be in engineering. But you do have to formally request a deferral. There is a process. We ask what you're going to be doing during that time, and then if it's approved, everything will carry forward. So it's no negative process. You don't have to let folks know necessarily while you're going through the process, I'm thinking I'm going to do a gap year. I would let the process play out, to be quite honest with you. Then every institution will let you know what their deferral process is.
All right, I think we had in the back.
Financial aid and scholarships. When I applied a long time ago, you got into this, as I recall, you got into the school, and then you asked for financial aid and scholarships. Is that still how it goes, or you kind of do it at the same time?
That's a good question. So financial aid has changed over the years. I don't know, how many families have heard of the new early FAFSA? Anybody, show of hands? Okay, a couple of hands. So the FAFSA, probably many of us, including myself, when we did the FAFSA, we went to the library. And we looked for, what's the color going to be this year? Is it a yellow or pink or green? And you fill out the FAFSA, mail it in, you sit down with your parents, do your taxes and all that stuff, and mail it off and wait for your aid report to come back to you. The process has changed. And so FAFSA, for the most part, is electronic. Now, students can complete the FAFSA. It's no longer waiting till the new year. Remember, January 1, it's available in October. So October 1st of every year, that the student will be in college for the next year, you want to complete and start working on your FAFSA. Every institution has a different date in terms of submitting it for best consideration for funds. For our institution, for example, it's due January 1, but it's available October 1st. So what that means for you guys, as you're working on your applications, in October of this year, 2020, the FAFSA will be available. And you'll be working on the FAFSA while you're still probably working on your college application. So that's different, to answer your question of how it used to be. That's definitely a bit different on the front end. On the back end of the process, most institutions still wait to send you your financial aid information after, but there are some institutions that have taken full advantage of this earlier FAFSA to get the financial aid package out, either with or on the heels of the admission decision. So in that, you might get merit scholarship information and or financial aid. Some institutions might give you your decision and a merit scholarship information and then financial aid quickly to follow. It depends on the institution. But having the earlier FAFSA has allowed for the process to move a bit quicker.
Okay, I think here, and then we'll go to the back one for you.
I just want to ask comments. So you did this in stages, and I wondered where the student pick fell in there and how you identified it.
Okay. Yeah, so my number one school was Tufts. A really good school, really good school to get into. I applied ED to Tufts, hoping that I would get in. I ultimately did not. And so when I got back my information saying I didn't get in, it kind of became a question of like, okay, now what? Like I think, and so I went back and between the first deadline and second deadline, I actually kind of not started over, but refreshed it. I went back to the process, looked at more colleges, and this is when I found what I wanted to submit, because I was on a website and it was colleges like, and so I clicked it and my school popped up, and I was intrigued by it, put a little note down, and I went back to it later. I went through the website, found like the clubs I liked, the outdoor ORAP, outdoor recreation program. I really fell for a school, and I had a list of other schools, and so I applied to it in the second wave, and then I got in then. Was there a second part of your question? I apologize.
I'm just curious how you could identify it and how the process worked.
Okay, so I guess I found it because it was recommended as a college-like, like literally on the website. And so it's one of the things that like I knew what I wanted. I had my list of attributes that I wanted. As I said before, like I knew a small liberal arts school within 1 day's drive. Like it hit all the categories, and it just popped up because it was one of those schools that fit into the list of things that I wanted. And so even though it wasn't the first school that I knew about, it's a pretty small school and not a huge name recognition to it, but it just popped up in my list, and because it fulfilled all the goals and stuff that I wanted in a college, it ended up being a place that I'm really happy with.
You mentioned after you got in, you reached back out to them and were able to secure more financial support?
Yeah, so...
How did that work?
Yeah, so I know this is not necessarily common. I don't know how many other people that happened to, but it came down to 2 colleges, and both had a pretty similar financial situation. And so I reached out to the college, and I asked for more money, and they said no. And then the deadline was getting closer, that May 1st deadline was getting closer, and I started decided. And so actually a member from the college, I think he's on the board of trustees, lives pretty close to me, gave me a call. And he said, hey, like I see that you're still, haven't decided yet, said yay or nay, what's going on? And I was honest with him, and I said, this is a school that I want to go to. If I could pick any school, this would be it, but it's financially a little heavy right now. And he said, okay, let me see what I can do. Thought he was just being polite. He gave me a call back about a week later, kind of surprised, I answered it. He's like, hey, so I got you a little bit more money, is it going to help at all? And I was like, okay. And ultimately, that call ended up being the deciding factor of where I ended up going. So, I'm not saying that happens to everybody. I know it's not common, but my school is very, very respecting of scholarships and giving money away. And so luckily it turned out that I was able to get a little bit more money, which helped me.
All right, we're going to take maybe 2 more questions, and then Janice has a couple more things that we need to go over with you before you leave. So we'll take 2 more questions now, and then we'll finish up the last part of our presentation, and then we'll close, and you'll have some more time to ask some more questions to our guests, okay? So because we know that time is of the essence. Okay, yes.
I can yield.
You can yield.
Yield my
Are you
time.
sure?
Well, okay. Application essays. How do admissions officers approach them? How should students approach them?
Carefully. A question about essays. So it depends. I really encourage families, we always encourage students, tell us about something else. If it's something that you see in your application, that you got that tough A in that particular course, we can see that usually. But tell us about something else about you, especially if you're applying to a school that does not have an interview process. We don't have an interview at Maryland, for example, and it's a lot of applications that we're getting. So that essay is that student's chance to really kind of showcase something specific about them that you wouldn't necessarily see in the application. It's not how many activities have I participated in. It might be something very personal. Most of us in admissions have come across, very, very personal stories that even some parents may not know that your children are writing about, to be quite honest with you. Some things like identity, some things like who they are, who they feel they're becoming, very, very personal things. But it's something that definitely helps to add an additional perspective to who that applicant is. And the question that we're asking ourselves is not, did they write the question right, did they answer the question? Answer the question, definitely. But we're asking ourselves, what else? What about this student would make them a great, great addition to our campus community? What do we have to offer that would really make a connection or serve this student well and their growth as a student? Because it's not just about coming to the campus and taking classes and getting a degree. It's about growing as an individual. You know, and so you would say and walk away from it and say, I can see that student being the leader of this. I can see that student being active in this particular organization. That's what we're looking for. And if we can see that in the essay, it does make a difference in the evaluation because it's holistic. It's not just your GPA, your SAT. If that was the case, the student will already be admitted if we wouldn't spend the time looking at every single piece of the application. So the essay definitely makes a difference.
Yeah, go ahead.
So you were talking about the interview, and I was curious about interviews. You said that Maryland doesn't do interviews. When does that come into play? And, you know, do you go for interviews at all these schools you're interested in, or just the top ones? How does that work?
So some schools have an official component of the application process that is an interview. And you'll know it when you see the application process. It'll say there's an interview, you have to, you know, meet with an alum, you're going to come into the institution, or whatever the case is. Some are doing Skype. I just saw some new technology today from a vendor, actually, that they're doing it where a student can be invited to come and do an interview electronically, and literally they just log in, and they're almost doing it virtually at this point. But every school doesn't offer that. You know, some are big schools that offer it, some are little schools that offer it. Some schools don't offer it at all. But we're an institution, we don't do interviews. So your informational interview could be you visiting that campus and just kind of sitting down with an admission officer one-on-one before you submit your application to get information. But that's not something that would officially be logged as part of your application. So it's important that if you're going through your list, ask the question, research the website, but don't be afraid to pick up the phone and ask, like, is there an interview, and what does that weigh in the process? So be very specific in your questions. Don't feel that you can't.
So you can advocate for an interview. You can, like, even if it says that it's not necessarily a part of it, you could call and ask to do it?
You wouldn't really advocate for an interview, but you could always seek more information.
Okay.
Yeah, but you want to find out if it's an official part of the application.
I'm going to jump onto that a little bit too. I had 2 interviews, and both were optional. And I really enjoy both my interviews because it's a great way to like represent yourself, like as a person. You're not just your numbers. You're not just a list of things. Like you go as a person, but also like it allows you to ask questions about the college. So both of the schools that I applied, I guess one of them I had visited, but one of them I hadn't visited yet. And so it was a great way for me to like get to know more about the school. And so you also see like what they're looking for, but you can also like propose what you're looking for in a college. And if the values that they are looking for don't match the values that you're looking for in a college, that tells you something about the college as well. So it's a great way to know about the college as well as the college to know about you. So if you can, I would highly suggest doing an interview. But it didn't really influence that much, but it really made me feel more comfortable when I actually showed up on campus.
I'll jump on that as well. My daughter didn't want to do an interview, but she had met the area rep here. And so she had already made a relationship and done a few emails. And so we had an informational situation. It wasn't really a traditional interview. Right. And when we got down to the school, she sat down and they had an open conversation for about an hour, which was pretty impressive. Sometime second semester, sophomore year, she ran into this person. The person said, I was really glad you came down for that information. You asked really good questions and you stuck in my memory afterwards. So, do you have an official interview? Maybe not, but did you get to somebody that's reading your essay? Did you know, the other thing I would say is, I think Candace is right, not everybody can visit every location, but I found my kids, when they were interested in a school, they just kept painting. And it was literally area rep question, admissions question. My son sent a couple of questions to the diversity person. My daughter sent a bunch of questions to department heads. And at least for one institution that I know, the back end of, they're keeping track of how many times you ping them. And in this world of Common App, where you can click 10 times, 16 times.
10 times. 7 to 10 times.
No more than 10 to 7 times. You know, they want to see that you just didn't click. They want to see some, at least, I hope I'm not talking out of school. They want to see that you really want to know something about them and that you care enough to interact with them over time. Overtime.
Some institutions. I mean, that's the technical age that we're living in. Like institutions that are really paying close attention to their website, Qualtrics of who's visiting, who's not visiting. Some may use that information and others may not. The other thing that I wanted to add about the interview piece is that find out if for scholarships there's an interview component. So the one thing that we do offer at our institution is for our full scholarship, there is an interview component. So those students have to come to campus. There's a full day activity. They have a luncheon, they meet with faculty members, but there is an interview component to determine who will receive a full or partial scholarship. So that might be after the admissions process, but some institutions may invite you to campus for that level of interview. But know if you're going to campus for that level of interview, it's still part of the recruitment process for both the student and the institution. They're asking questions of you that are typically from your application, but students should feel comfortable, and families too, asking the institution things about the campus community and about what is it that our student would really benefit from by coming here. So it's still an opportunity for you to engage with the institution and get some additional information before making the commitment.
So we're just quickly going to go over next steps, so those of you who have to leave can go. And then hopefully, I guess, if they have a little more time, I see Dad, can stay and answer a couple more questions. I'm going to let the tall person turn on the projector.
This is warming up.
Okay. But just in terms of next steps, like Chris said, exams are coming up, so that's the real next step, is really doing what you need to do to get those done. But after that, we'll start scheduling those meetings. In the email, we're going to send out, how you can schedule a meeting with us. There's a couple different ways. But we want to schedule those family meetings and get started helping us get a sense of, where parents and students are, what they're looking for, so that we can, start making suggestions, so that we can start college counseling.
In the coming days, we're going to share with you a couple of documents. We will be able to share with you through Maya, but we'll also send out an email copy of it as well. They're questionnaires, one for students and one for parents. And these are questionnaires that we will require to give back to us in advance of our first meeting with you. It's going to start to help you think through a lot of the information that you've heard today as far as where do I get started, but then also give us an orientation as to where you are now in the process, so that we do start to have those conversations, it'll be really substantive and useful. So be on the lookout for those questionnaires. And with that, we'll explain about how to register, how to schedule meetings with us. Things we've talked about before, and if you haven't done it yet, this is the time to start thinking about it, is thinking about planning and registering for standardized tests. If you are planning to take the March SAT, the deadline for that will close in early February, but the earlier you register, the better chance you'll have of getting the testing center you want to have. If you wait till the very end, you'll be able to register, but you might be driving 30 miles to take the test. So if you know you're planning to take the March SAT, then think about that when you do that. And we'll say it again, March SAT is March 14th. If you are going on an intersession that leaves before March 14th, that is not the time to take the SAT. You want to look to take it in May or in June at that point in time.
For our non-native English speakers, you're also going to be required to take a test of English language fluency. So it's either the TOEFL, there's a new test called the Duolingo English test that a lot of institutions are taking. But again, it is required by most institutions, if you're not a native English speaker, that you do take the TOEFL. And much like the SAT, if you take it in the spring and you're not happy with your score, then you have opportunities to retake it. But it's also something else you have to fit in to your schedule with if you're taking APs, if you're taking the SAT, if you have finals, right? So really starting to look at, and it's another way we'll help you, but starting to look at what your larger testing plan is going to be.
And you've heard it a number of times today, but after exams in the second half of the year, you should schedule some time. If you're not someone who sees your advisor regularly, this is they're another resource that helps you start to think about what might be a good type of college, since they have spent time with you and they might know a little bit about you. But getting to talk to them as well as your teachers for second semester about your performance and if there are ways to improve, so that you can have the best second semester possible. That's something that should be on your to-do list. So in addition to making time to see Candace and myself, you should be making time to talk with your teachers and your advisors so that you can get a good plan in place for doing your best in the second half of the year.
Questions?
Oh, yes.
For teacher recommendations, do you
Yes.
need to have sort of a math and science and English, or can it be English and history? Or?
Yes, it can be English and history. So it used to be you had to have like a math, science, and an English history. You just need 2 teachers now. That can be foreign language. That can be for some of our students who are interested in the arts, right? They'll have their art teacher, the dance teacher, whatever it is, right? A rec also. It's really just 2 teachers.
Yes. No school will require more than that. And some schools may only require 1, but you'll have 2, and then you'll let Meredith know which is the 1 teacher that you would want to have go to any particular school, if that happens.
The one thing I will say about teacher recommendations is as you're thinking about who you want to write a recommendation, it's not necessarily the teacher where you're getting the A, right? What schools are looking for is someone who can talk about your abilities as a student, right? So sometimes a teacher who can say, Candace was struggling, but she came to academic help, and she did this thing, and really strengthened her performance in my class. Sometimes that's more valuable than the teacher who's like, yeah, she's great at history, right? That doesn't really tell a school anything, because you don't have to be psychic to know that students are going to struggle sometimes in college, and colleges want to know that you can deal with that struggle. So think about that as well as you're thinking about your teacher recommendations.
Things for everyone to do. Research colleges. You've heard that a lot today. So start going on websites. There'll be different resources that we'll share. If you go back to the October presentation that we had together, we talked a lot about how you might be able to start researching colleges. People still produce guidebooks. And so if you're a paper person and you like to, feel the pages in your hand, there are lots of great guidebooks out there that you can use. And we can send out suggested readings in places where you can go to find some other good information about colleges. And then this is a great time to start thinking about schools and visits. As Candace mentioned earlier, it's not feasible for everyone to visit every single college because that's not just time, but it also can be a lot of money. But we have the benefit of living in and between 2 major college centers with Baltimore and DC, with the full gamut of college options, from small liberal arts to Research One universities, from your flagship institutions to specialized performing arts and visual arts programs. And so you can get a good sense of what type of school you might want to go to without driving more than an hour or being on the metro for more than 30 minutes, okay? And Candace and I can talk to you about how you might be able to take advantage of that opportunity to just start to get a sense before you start thinking about, well, if I'm gonna think about going outside of the region or getting on a plane, what might I be looking for? So then we can come up with targets for where you could go and schools you might be able to, to visit on a greater, maybe more national tour. And with that, you can start adding schools of higher learning. And we can see the colleges that you put in there for your college considering list, and then we can give you feedback on those. And then that can just help give you a central place to start managing your list, as well as parents making suggestions where you can add some and then delete them. And then this is also when you want to start thinking about your plans for the summer. Like James mentioned, thinking about whether you might want to do some classes, or you want to get your community service hours in, or you might want to, get a job, or, or go to a free college, program somewhere. Okay. Okay. This is a big reminder. You've gotten a number of communications about the SAT and ACT prep classes that we'll be offering here, or the Transcript Academy will be hosting, on our campus beginning in a couple of weeks. We'll send out another reminder, but all the information has been emailed to you. A reminder that the deadline to register for the SAT class is a week from tonight, okay? The ACT class doesn't start till February, and so there's gonna be more time for that. But they need to know by next week so that they know how much information, how much materials they have to send to us. And also want to remind you that the biggest cost benefit for everyone is when more students enroll. So at the lowest price point is once we have more than 15 students actually enroll in the course. And so if you are thinking about doing that, you want to make sure you fill out the form. There's a link in the emails that have been sent out to send to register for the course. And then there's an attachment for an engagement letter, which basically outlines what the course is about, what you're agreeing to, and then for parents it also gives them information on how you want to be billed for the course. Okay, so if you have any questions, you can email Transcend directly, or you can ask Candace and I any questions about it. But this is just a reminder of the SAT course, and the next slide is a reminder about the ACT prep course. Okay. And then finally, these are just links to the different standardized testing, websites. Also know that we'll be sending out this information with the follow-up email, so you don't have to write all this stuff down at this point. And as well as information about financial aid resources, scholarship databases, and then finally, the save the dates for the next two big programs you should have on your calendar. So, can you talk a little about the application case study program?
Sure. So this is our second year doing this program. Essentially what we're doing is we're having admissions officers from 4 different schools will come, and they'll have admissions files, and they'll lead you all through an admissions committee. So they will run, we'll split you all up into groups, and you'll all read the applications as if you were the committee and making decisions. It really gives you an opportunity to see what happens in those rooms, to understand some of the ways in which these decisions are made and some of the factors involved. So yeah, we did it last year. People really enjoyed it. I think it really helped people understand how to attack their applications as well. And so we'll be doing that on the 16th, which, fun fact, the day before my birthday.
Which is why I'm
right, which I won't be here for my birthday. And then the WAYS College Fair, the Washington Area Independent Schools College Fair is at Georgetown Prep on the 22nd. It is a massive fair, and we go every year. It's a wonderful opportunity to engage with some of the schools that you've hopefully researched and have questions for. We will be having